So, after listening to some concerns via email as well as discussing some problem areas that some of my in-class students might have had with a couple of the areas in the current assignment, where you had the option of selecting the damaged airplane or the damaged family photo, I just wanted to cover a couple quick little areas just to ensure that you all aren't bumping into some of the same problems. So both of these have their own set of issues. As we mentioned, this one's got like a big burn mark, what looks like, as well as quite a bit of peeling and flaking of quite a few of the important elements that are present, as well as, some water damage. The family photo is mostly just scratches and small stuff, but you can see that there's some color shift where the scan occurred. Some of these creases are extremely deep. This one too. And you've got the problem, or we'll call it a challenge rather than a problem, of the wallpaper pattern, which needs to stay intact. So these are certain areas that can cause a little bit of a challenge. I'll go ahead and duplicate my layer here. So with both of these, since the color can shift a little bit from warm to cool, in particular in this example, because you've got sort of that warm kind of tobacco sepia color in the backdrop, but you've also got blue text. And if we zoom in and look at some of these areas where there was a little bit of a shine, you can actually see a piece of tape is holding this together right here. You've got dark blacks and then a cooler, lighter black in some of the areas. So it's possible, depending on the way that you're editing, to accidentally kind of bring more color into other areas. So one quick way to prevent this would be to open up a hue and saturation adjustment layer and turn the saturation off. I don't mind if you do this for the purpose of making it a little bit easier to edit. Later on, if you wanted to, you could always colorize it and then bring back that sepia tint if you wanted to do so. That's not an issue. But for the sake of everyone's sanity, if that color is giving you a hard time, feel free to reduce it to black and white. Also, the majority of the lower portion of this assignment is very dark. Between the dresses and skirts and pants, the dark chair that they're all sitting on, and the carpet, it's all very dark. So you really need a really sharp eye for the lower half of this assignment. The reason that I mention this is if you're not careful as you edit, it's real easy to completely miss the fact that his shoes are down here, her foot is down here, her feet are down here. There's a faint carpet pattern. So this is another option to utilize your adjustment layers. Brightness and contrast. Bring up the brightness enough to where you can see what you're dealing with. Especially if you tend to have maybe a screen that's a little bit darker than standard. Brightening up using an adjustment layer is great because you can turn it off when you're done, but it'll help you see things that you may not see otherwise. And makes it much easier to pinpoint problem areas. Like right here, a lot of people think that these lights are something that needs to be edited out, these little light areas, but if you take a really good hard look, this is actually shine off of the wooden feet of the chair that they're sitting on. It's supposed to be there. So don't remove them. Some spots will be easier to fix than others. If you're careful with the way that you use the tools, you shouldn't run into any problems though. The biggest thing that I can maybe offer as a suggestion is to remember that different tools serve different purposes. So don't attempt to fix the entire document just using the spot healing tool, because chances are you will run into issues. It is not a tool that fixes everything. It just doesn't work that way. Great for spots, maybe thin scratches, but it will not solve all the problems. Now, in the case of the wallpaper, I'm going to do my best to try and get rid of some of this yuck that's on the wallpaper. So one of the problems that occurs with the wallpaper is it's very difficult to use some of these tools and keep the pattern of the wallpaper consistent. Not only that, you can see some of the pattern has changed. It's okay in some areas and kind of tricky in other areas, like right through here. There's like like three kind of lobed, I think of it like as a clover right here, and part of this edge starts to get a little bit fuzzy. So one thing is with this particular tool, it's not always going to do as great of a job as you might expect it to when it comes down to patterns that it needs to retain. It might do an all right job, but it's not perfect. This is a great opportunity to use the good old copy and paste method, where you maybe copy a region and then move it up. So like here's this kind of three clovered element, and there's one right here underneath the name. So I could run a copy and a paste and then try to place it where it needs to go. In this case, I might lower the opacity to make sure that it lines up. And then raise it when I'm good. And maybe erase around the edges to soften it. I would want to do this with a soft brush though. Now, if you're trying to, keep the names in there, the words Hillcrest, you might want to pick a different method, but that can very much help, as can Clone Stamp. So if I wanted to try to continue parts of that pattern up, I'll use up here as an example, Alt or Command, or excuse me, no, the Alt key is the same on PC and Mac. I might select a region. Oh, helps if I'm on the correct layer. That makes a big difference. There we go. Select the object that I want to change. You can see that it's cloning over the yellow. Don't worry, because it's underneath that hue and saturation layer. And then I can just line up the shape, and you can see that it's recreating that pattern for me. Nice and easy, no stress. I can come back down here and go a little smaller to try and touch up the areas around the text, just to make sure I can keep as much of that as possible. Clone Stamp does an amazing job. You just want to make sure that you don't ignore where certain shapes start and end, because you might duplicate something that you don't want. So little bits go a long way. Pay attention to what your cursor does so you're not adding problem areas. Nice and easy. Facial features are tricky. In the event that you run into a problem where you think you've fixed something and all of a sudden she doesn't have a nose, which it happens. If you've gone too far to back up in your history to fix it, another easy thing is to pull out your eraser tool. This is another good reason why we duplicate, because if I hide that, the bottom version, which should be a smart object if you brought everything in the way that I've asked, you're essentially cutting a hole in the top copy and revealing the bottom damaged version on top of it. As long as all your work is done on your working layer, you can go back in with a smaller brush and make additional corrections. Same thing with this guy. This has larger amounts of damage, and it's easier to kind of fudge the backdrop because, you know, it's land from the air, you know. Oops, I need to duplicate the layer and work from that. There we go. So my biggest suggestion in this case, and you can see that there's some color shift as well, is if you're running into problems with color, you don't have to, but feel free to make an adjustment layer and get rid of as many of the specks as you possibly can. And I know that there's a lot of them. This is going to be time consuming. There isn't an easy way to get rid of all the dust and grime and crud from this. But once you've got an area that's maybe really clean, really good looking, it's going to be very easy to take this and use it to correct the area that is in very bad shape. The nice thing too is this type of work's kind of methodical, so you can throw some good music on, or maybe dual screen, and watch Netflix or something as you work, and still be able to get stuff done. Just make sure that you are capable of paying close enough attention to not make silly mistakes, because they do happen. Now, in class, I talked about an option called Content Aware that can be very helpful depending on the problem area that you're dealing with. I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll post the video, the YouTube video link as well. It isn't something that I've made, but it is very helpful. The goal of Content Aware is you make a tight selection around the area that you want to edit, and then you go to Edit, Fill, and make sure that the option you have selected is called Content Aware. Hit OK. It looks around and tries to fill in the blank for you. So you can see here, it did a good job getting rid of the big thing. Now I just have to get rid of all the little stuff that it replaced it with. So all these little specks. This is part of the reason why it's so important to go in and get rid of all these tiny little flaws. Because if you leave them in and then you use an option such as Content Aware, you stand a very good chance of duplicating that problem. Content Aware would be perfect for this water damage that would need to go away as well. Let's see how it does in a couple other areas. So I'm just grabbing some of these big shapes. The hotkey for using content aware is Shift backspace or Shift delete, and it will pop up. Now you can see here it cut like a bite out of the airplane. In this instance, maybe this wouldn't be the direction that I'd want to take it in. I might want to do a little more work. What content aware doesn't do well is if you make a big kind of general selection, especially if there's not really a lot of stuff for it to source from to try and fix it. Because you don't know what it's going to give you. Sometimes it comes out okay, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it pulled from down here for this spot. It pulled from, looks like right here for these spots. And while, yes, it got rid of the major problem, now you've still got other stuff to clean up. So the goal of Content Aware is to try and get as clean of an end product as possible, and then use it to go in and touch, just touch up little areas that it maybe didn't quite catch or don't quite look well. But it's not a one-stop shop by any means. And the video that I'll show you, the people conducting, the tutorial, make it look really easy, like it's magic. It's not, I promise. You have to be kind of calculating with the way that you make the corrections and tell the tool how to work. Otherwise, it is very easy to get results that are just as difficult as what you started with before you used Content Aware. But all these little specks of stuff would need to go away. So, also, don't forget the good old copy and paste method. If you've got a certain area that you want to maybe flip to correct another area, remember you can copy and paste a layer and then go to Edit, Transform, and tell it to flip horizontal or flip vertically, and it will mirror that copied area down to make it a little easier. Short lecture this week. I really wanted you all to focus on trying to complete and clean up these assignments because I know they can be time consuming. Best of luck. Feel free to send me an email if you have any problems, and I'll be in touch. Good luck.